Black, black, black. Yeah. It ain't my style, it ain't my shade, ain't what I do, ain't what I say. I'm just hella black, I'm just hella black, I'm just hella black. Your fault if you're offended, I'm just hella black, 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 I'm just hella black, 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 I'm just hella black, black, black. Your fault if you're offended, I'm just.
Hey y'all, how you doing? Welcome back to my parking lot. Happy Juneteenth. Well, it's Juneteenth when I'm making this. By the time y'all see it, it's gonna be after Juneteenth, but that's okay. Today we're gonna be talking about the idea that slavery was 400 years ago and that black people should just get over it and that it has no effect on day-to-day life, or even that, our ancestors owned slaves. That has nothing to do with us. Here's why you're wrong. First of all, slavery began over 500 years ago. It did not end, however, until June 19, 1865. That is only 155 years ago. Here's why that's important. Here's why it's still a problem. Number one, let's do the math. 155 years is only 5 or 6 generations, give or take. Your granddaddy's granddaddy, if you will. So that extra granddaddy that we're talking about, your granddaddy's granddaddy, he was raised to believe that black people were only here to be slaves, meant to serve white people, be their property, make them money, have no life or existence at all. That granddaddy taught your granddaddy, who was raised in the era, to believe that black people were just niggers, people to blame the Civil War on, people to hate, people to torture and exert violence on whenever you feel like it. Those people were meant to live a subpar existence because they were less favorable to God than whites anyway. And so what that means is that granddaddy, the granddaddy that was raised to believe that black people were just niggers, he taught his grandson, which could be you or could be your father, that black people are just less than. Yes, time has gone by. We have learned that all people are supposed to be treated fairly. However, when this racist ideology is so strong and it keeps getting passed down from generation to generation, it's not that far behind us, is my point here. Number two, Reconstruction. If you remember from history class, immediately after slavery ended or immediately after the Civil War, so if somebody try to tell you the Civil War is about states' rights and not slavery, they lying. States' rights about what? States' rights to have slaves. Anyway, so immediately after the Civil War, there's this period of Reconstruction where the South has to be rebuilt. I don't got corona, chill. It's my allergies. So the Reconstruction period is meant to rebuild the South because William T. Sherman ran through, fucked everybody up. So we have to literally rebuild infrastructure in the South. We also have to rebuild the systems that were already in place. And in this period, slavery has ended because it's no longer legal, but certain things are put in place to keep the system of slavery intact. Other institutions, other situations have to be constructed to kind of maintain this power balance between white and black people. These things are driven by economics. Since black people came over here anyway to make people money, nothing has changed. So sharecropping is instituted, tenant farming is instituted. These are things to ensure that black people cannot make money on their own. The only skills that they have are skills they are taking from the plantation. So when the ability to make money for the crops that they grow arises, they're going to take it. However, they don't get to keep most of this money. They have to. Tenant farming literally means you live on the ground of someone else and you have to pay them for the ground that you live on. So the bulk of their funds goes just to their own housing. And more often than not, they're working for their old slave masters. So what does that tell you? There's still this power dynamic of ownership and limited movement and ability for black people. Number three, financial dependence. There was no way for black people to be independent. Number one, because in tandem with Reconstruction, there were these things called black codes erected in the South. Black codes came before Jim Crow, and black codes were created specifically to inhibit the movement, inhibit the freedoms of black people. You could not walk around just living your life without proof that you worked for somebody, proof of employment. So are you saying like a pass to walk around town? Absolutely, that's what I'm saying. It's also reinforcing the idea that black people can't go into business for themselves because, number one, who is going to give them a writ of proof that they work for themselves? Number two, who's going to believe that a black person works for themselves? Also, what land are they going to use to work for themselves? Black people don't got no land. Aside from the choice few people in South Carolina and South Georgia who were able to grab that 40 acres and the mule that William T. Sherman gave with his Special Order 15, no black people had the resources to go into business for themselves. They might have gone to selling markets, things that they had left over after giving their landlords money or after sharing their crops with their previous masters. But they don't, it's not there. Like there's no basis, there's no foundation, there's no ability for them to get their feet in the ground about this thing. Number 4, the 13th Amendment. What does it say? Do we know? It says that slavery nor involuntary servitude shall be permitted. Let me look it up. Let me not lie. Because I know what it say, but I want to say it word for word so y'all know what I'm talking about. Oh, isn't that great? I don't got no Wi-Fi out here. I'm gonna put it on the screen. I don't got no Wi-Fi out here, so cool. But it says that slavery nor involuntary servitude shall be permissible unless as punishment for a crime. What was that? Unless? So literally you're saying it is permissible, it is legal, it is allowed as long as someone commits a crime. So do you know what we do now, black people? I'm sorry, do you know what we do now, white people? We make it so that anything black people do, we can say it's a crime and we can send them to jail for it. So going back to these black codes, not only did they make it so you had to carry a pass around town to show that you work for somebody, they made even the smallest offenses, and not just offenses anybody could make, but the smallest offenses that were characteristic of black people who did not have resources, who did not have homes, who did not have financial security, anything that they could be doing, a crime. So you have loitering is a crime, you have stealing a pig for less than $1 is a crime, you have disrespecting a white person as a crime, you have being out after a certain time at night is a crime, and all of these crimes you can be put in jail for. And when you're put in jail, it's not just you go stay in a jailhouse. It is you either go into a convict leasing program or you could even be in it for peonage debt. What that means is that any white person could accuse any black person of owing them money. And because they owe them money, they now have to go to jail to work off that debt. What's worse or what's more is that jails then lease out their convicts, lease out their criminals for other big business owners or wealthy men to do free labor for them. Sounds a lot like slavery to me. Sound like slavery to you? So this is where we get chain gangs. And we're not even talking about just grown men on chain gangs. We're talking about men, women, and children. I'll show some pictures on the screen, like people of all age were put on these chain gangs to work for people. And it sounds a whole lot like the prison system today, but no, I'm still talking about the late 19th century. Number 5, the 14th Amendment. This was the Equal Rights Amendment, or rather the Citizenship Amendment with equal protections under the law. It said that all people who are naturally born in the United States would be considered citizens and get equal protections under the law. We know for a fact that ain't no black person get equal protections under the law, at least, sorry, my mom called, or at least until 1965, when Johnson was coerced, was bullied into giving us a Voting Rights Act when black people were just getting slain in the streets on TV, and it was a bad look for everybody. And what am I talking about? What did that unequal rights look like from 1900 to 1965? So 65 years of inequity and inequality. That was segregation. That was Jim Crow. That was black people being forced to use substandard and subpar resources and materials or even facilities. That was black people being able to be picked up off the street, and if you were a woman, raped and then thrown back on the street, thrown back in front of your doorstep. Or if you were a man, if you were anybody, man, woman, or child, be picked up on the side of the road at any time, pulled out of your house. You know, Emmett Till, he was not picked up. He was not picked up on the street after whistling at that white woman. They went and knocked on his door and demanded that they bring them that black boy so they could lynch them. That was 65 years of violence. That's why the Great Migration happened. Black people were running away because white people were just running rampant, killing everybody. So what I've just loosely went over for you here, folks, is 155 years of continued forms of enslavement, financial dependence on white people, white people's violence against black people, subpar standards of living, abbreviated rights, abbreviated civil liberties since the end of slavery. So yes, the institution of slavery, of people on plantations, that ended in 1865. Still not too long ago, but a financial type of enslavement, a mental type of enslavement, a physical type of enslavement has continued from there on. Stop saying slavery was over 400 years ago. Stop saying that it was something that we need to get over, because even though I wasn't a slave, what Jordan Lucas say? My grandmama was a slave. That should get to me. It's been 155 years of white supremacy using systematic oppression to keep society as close to slavery as possible, while just making it seem like black, brown, and native people have equal rights. And remember, I'm here to inform, not to convince. So if you disagree, find someone in the comments to argue with.